What's the strangest thing you found in your house after you bought it? Part 2. Oh, I might win this thread. I was taking down some old ceiling tiles in my basement one fine summer day. Things were going surprisingly well, no bugs, mice, or asbestos. Until I shifted the tile that's directly above the boiler. I saw something rolling off the tile and felt it hit my shoulder. I looked down and in a small pile of dust and paper debris was a wooden dildo. A sizable and clearly used wooden dildo. Now, I was still holding the tile above my head and realized that it was heavier than what the last few had been. Great. I definitely wasn't expecting a fleet enema, old and yellowed condoms, or the mice nest made with shredded pork that was containing all of the previously mentioned items. It was like I was holding a platter of nightmares. But I think the worst part of all of that was when started to dump it all into the trash. I noticed there was a book under the nest. I won't ever forget the title either. Concentration Camp Bestiality. And that was just the start of the stuff she had uncovered. The next tile held far more books and magazines. I called the police once I found photos of minors. They ended up taking away a whole box of books, magazines, film negatives and loose photos. They did leave me with the wooden dildo though. Mercy, the basement still gives me the creeps sometimes. My parents bought a fixer-upper that had an old decrepit shed way out by the back fence that we planned to fix. When it came time to start demolition, we found a false floor in the corner and inside were candles, and about a dozen jars filled with liquids, rotted fruits, flowers, etc. I picked one up and found an upside-down photo of some guy underneath. My GF at the time starts freaking out saying it was a brujeria and that we should leave it alone and burn the shed down. My mom agreed with her. My dad and I, being slightly more reasonable, just wanted to throw that crap out and go on with the project. We eventually compromised and they got a priest to come and bless the site and throw around some holy water before letting us throw it away. The walls never started bleeding nor did any portals open to the nether realms, so I think we're in the clear. Security cameras. Okay, that may not sound too odd at first, and certainly I was aware of some of them before I bought the place, but where it gets odd is the sheer number. I could understand one on the front porch. This guy had there one named at the door and one at the walkway, another above the garage door aimed at the driveway, two. One facing each way, around the corner of the driveway, one on the back patio, one inside the garage, one inside the living room. I just moved in, and first thing I did was disconnect the control system from the power supply and internet feed it was still connected to. Second was to peruse all the rooms to make sure I wasn't missing any other cameras. This past weekend my brother helped me remove all the cameras from the walls, and I spent that evening pulling the cords out of the walls. I don't know how many feet of cord there were. Hundreds, certainly, probably thousands. Completely ridiculous. A cat. The house we purchased had a closet under the basement staircase. During the final walkthrough I felt the compulsion to open the door out of curiosity. Seeing that it was a closet with no light, I decided to shine a light to see how far back it went. In most narrow part I saw to glowing eyes and was able to make out the outline of a cat. When we called the owners thinking they'd be so relieved, they had acted surprised saying we searched all over for him and had just figured we ran away during the move. As we proceeded with the closing procedures, they continuously offered for us to take the cat saying their apartment wouldn't allow pets, and they had nowhere to take him. It got to the point where our realtor had to tell them to stop. I like to imagine it's all happenstance and they didn't just decide to lock the poor cat up in a closet for us to find. The worst part is, we didn't move into the house until a few days later. If I hadn't randomly decided to shine my flashlight inside the closet, that poor cat would have suffered. Another rental story here. Apparently my parents found satanic symbols inside the closet in my room, written behind the sliding glass mirror. The landlords told my parents they found dead chickens inside the closet, but I guess they didn't see the writing. I don't remember this because I was a baby, but apparently after we moved in people kept coming to the house asking if we knew the old owners and if they were still around. This happened for a couple of weeks until eventually people stopped coming. My parents think the people who used to live in the house were drug dealers or something, but I'm not sure. I think something else was going on. We bought our house this past July. Our dogs like to dig, and we have a garden bed up against the back of the house. We also have a concrete patio That's a square. A couple months go by and I notice what I thought was a torn-up dog toe sticking out from under the patio. Being lazy, ignore it for a couple days. My husband comes home one day and we're playing with the dogs in the backyard when he notices it. He walks over and realizes, no, that's not a torn toy, that's a child's jacket. I grab the shovel and hand it to him, and he proceeds to dig at the jacket to get it out from under the concrete pad. Because if there's anything we've learned from crime shows, you do not touch that shit. Indeed, it is a little girl's jacket. And what's that further down into this hole? Is that a blanket? He pulls it out with the shovel, and it's a mother fluffin' pillowcase with weird reddish stains on one side. Fast forward a few weeks and there's a police officer and a cadaver dog scoping out our backyard. The good news, there were no traces of dead body or anything in the backyard. Bad news, no one knows who the jacket or pillowcase belonged to. Our neighbor has lived next door to this house for 50 years and she's known every family that has lived here. And there has only ever been little boys. We used to live in this old farmhouse that was built on an old Indian reservation, and it stretched at least 50 acres. There was a treaty not allowing the sacred land to be destroyed. The man who originally built his farmhouse hung himself there. In the basement was a hidden room that had many rolled-up scrolls, large ancient books covered in an inch thick of dust. I was 5 at the time, so sadly I couldn't read any of the stuff. But I was so freaked out down there and hated having to take my laundry to the wash. I would run up the stairs absolutely terrified. To this day I hate basements. The rest of the farmland was so beautiful. So many treasures. There was even a really old car that was abandoned in the midst of a bunch of trees. As if there was an accident and the car was never retrieved. We used to find arrowheads all over and around the creek that ran through. It was such a beautiful place. Eventually our family left. When my siblings and I grew up, we came back to check out the place and the banks took over the land. And a neighborhood was built in place. It was so awful to see such beautiful land taken over and destroyed. Edit. I was just reminded of all the grinding stones, bowls, and drilled stones found along with the arrowheads. The scrolls and books were all in German, one including an old Bible. A French man. I had purchased an apartment in South Korea back in 2012, having just moved there for work. The agent handed me the keys, which I in turn gave to the movers. The agreement was that they would move everything into the apartment whilst I flew back to Spain to settle my debts and close my bank accounts. I was away for 3 days, in which time the apartment had been filled up as per the plan. Having spent well over 3 days traveling non-stop, I was so tired that when I got to my new flat I pretty much fell asleep the moment I got in the door. I woke up later that day after 9 hours of sleep. I heard crashing in the kitchen, and so groggily got up and went to investigate. There, standing at the sink, was a man stripped to the waist and smoking a cigarette. It turns out that he had been given the keys by the movers, who thought he was me. This guy had no idea what was happening, but he had made himself at home for the night. I never found out the whole story, as I speak limited French and limited Korean. He left within 2 minutes and didn't come back. Family has flipped houses for 30 years. Found a .22 short burger revolver in a closet top shelf. Once when removing a wall, we found 3 CDs still in the wrapping. Selena, Ace of Base saw the sign, and another Spanish band. The CDs were physically closed into the wall. When my then GF, now wife, moved into a rental in New Orleans, there was a brand new hatchet in the kitchen drawer. I still have it and call it my kitchen hatchet, yet it lives in the garage now. The house I lived in from 4th grade through college had 25 years worth of National Geographics in the attic. The whole county flooded 3 months after my parents bought the place in '94. It was 2.5 acres with a lot of unmaintained brush. About 20 telephone pole pieces 3 to 16 feet long floated out of the brush and started heading out the gate. The flood flow happened to be towards the gate. We tied them all to the spot where the garbage was picked up, so that worked out well. Found lots of old newspapers and lost tools in walls when we renovate. Found a .38 slug in a roof when we replaced it. It made it 1/3 way through the plywood. A beehive once. We had to call an exterminator. About 20 years ago, one of my brothers found a first edition Frankenstein book, autographed by Mary Shelley. He found it rehabbing the upstairs on my old neighbor's house we grew up to that he brought. He had it appraised by a legitimate antique book dealer and discovered it was the real deal, and authenticated. It's worth a lot of money. He never really said how much. It's worth enough to have his eyes light up even to this day when someone brings it up. He still has it, keeps it, in bank safety deposit box. My old neighbors traveled all over the world and were well educated, including their children and grandchildren, who were almost all medical physicians, PhD engineers and attorneys. Smart people, to say the least. My mom figured they found the book in one of their European travels and knew a good find, so they hid it. The neighbors grew up during the Great Depression, so they didn't trust banks, which is pretty common from people of that era. When we were moving into our old house, this was about 6 years ago, we were looking around putting away boxes and we decided to store some stuff in the old crawl space that the house had. And when we went inside the crawl space, we found a lot of old things. In talking things like this old wooden rocking horse, some old dolls, porcelain, tea sets, etc. The house itself was pretty old, and this stuff was from the 1800s. The stuff was apparently either just left there by previous owners, or they never went inside the crawl space. Honestly, have no clue. Anyways, the most intriguing thing we found was a box filled with old letters written by some little girl to her parents, grandparents, unsure, because it was obviously a child writing these letters, and they were all addressed to nicknames. And I mean, there was a ton of these old letters, all super dusty, tearing, and the color was washing away from time. These letters were all about what had happened that given day, about the future, etc. Nevertheless, it was super interesting reading these, felt like opening a time capsule, and it kinda was in a way. Alright, hopefully at least 3 people get to read my long stories. I purchased a hut home. If you don't know what that is, it was a foreclosed home that has since been put up for auction essentially. I got mine for about $23,000 and ended up putting a lot of work into it throughout the past 6 years I've lived here. At first, we just had to do some light remodeling. When Ashley got access to it, there was a disgusting blue carpet with stains all over it. It smelled awful and needed ripped up, so we did. Underneath the carpet was a pleasant surprise, a beautiful floor made of blonde wood. We were hoping we would keep getting small surprises like this, but we didn't. Instead, we found that the copper from the AC was stolen. Then we found that the air ducts were ripped up under the house. Then we found cement poured down the sinks. Just a bunch of angry past tenant acts. About a year later, a group of kids stopped by. They used to live here. They told me the floors were nasty because they let their pets run around and pee and shit everywhere. Rabbits, raccoons, mice, snakes, birds, dogs and cats. Some of it was pee and poop, other stains were blood. Then they told me their grandfather died in my house. He had a heart attack in his sleep, which was the room I currently sleep in. Fast forward a few years and some minor work here and there. My bathroom decides to collapse. Literally, the shower fell down, revealing wet sheetrock and black mold. Our cheapest option was to tear it down and rebuild. GFS parents are former contractors. We found out the whole 4.51 feet bathroom was rotten. Instead of replacing floors, the former tenants would lay more floor down. The bathroom was held together by one layer of plywood, linoleum, 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 wood, linoleum, wood, wood, then tile. It took us forever to tear that fucker out. The shower was put in wrong as well. The tiles were literally stacked and glued. When it fell apart, they fell like dominoes. The nastiest thing we found to date, however, was when we were tearing the floor up. I was at work at the time when I got the call from GF's brother. "What do you want us to do with this cooler of shit?" I was confused and asked what he meant. He said there's literally a cooler of shit under the house and they had to evacuate because the smell was so bad. I told him I'll take care of it when I get back. I was expecting a cooler with animal droppings in it. Nope. It was literally a brown igloo cooler propped underneath, where the toilet was, with what looked like diarrhea and water mixed in. It looked like shit. It smelled like shit. And I imagine it tasted like shit too. Who knows how long it's been down there or how it kept for so long, but it did. And that is the worst thing I've found in my house. When I was a kid, my mom bought this old Victorian-style home. Heading up the stairs, there was a landing with a big mirror on it. One day I was playing and ran into it, tearing the mirror off the wall. Behind it was a second attic with a whole bunch of Civil War stuff behind it. Letters from a soldier to his lady, a Civil War coat, and an old rusted musket. My mom donated it all to a museum, but it was super cool. Fast forward to when I bought my house a couple months ago. The toilet wasn't filling back up properly. Called a plumber who had to take the entire thing apart. Vibrator. Rented a 2-bedroom with my buddy and his GF. Turns out the cleaning crew hired by my apartment just took the money and lied about cleaning the unit, so it was still a mess when we showed up. So the family living here was Indian. We found a rupee on the floor in one of the bedrooms, and the previous owner left all of his immigration visa documentation here. There was also beard hair all over the carpets and rotting meat stuck in the dishwasher. But you know what the strangest part of all was? It was the eyes. The previous owners had crudely painted a single white eye, with a red iris onto all the doors in the unit, in addition to one on the fridge and a see. I tried looking it up to see if the sigils had any religious or spiritual significance, but I couldn't find anything online about the meaning behind it. We ended up washing the doors off and eventually forgot about the eyes. Fast forward to about a month later, and we were all walking home from the Hy-Vee grocery store near our home with a couple friends that visited for the weekend. I suddenly stopped dead in my tracks because something managed to catch my eye. Or maybe the eye managed to catch me. There, on the concrete sidewalk, was another small white eye with a red iris staring back at me. Bought our house this July. We redid all the plumbing and put in PEX. After ripping out the drywall to expose the pipes to a bathtub, shower. Along the underside of the tub where there's like a cast-sized crawl space, was a flipping needle with dried heroin. Now we only suspected heroin because of the area we live. Could have been meth as well. Neither my husband or I would properly know. Anyways, I leave to let my husband sort out its disposal, after deciding it would not have been a good idea to phone the police. And then we found cheap porn DVDs in the built-in china cabinet in the dining room. A few months later, we cleaned the attic out in the spring. Oh, not me, but this happened to a family friend. They bought a huge mansion on the water. Their 2-year-old kid went missing one day, and all of a sudden, the parents heard the ringing of a bell, the kind you have on the top of the house. They went outside to look at the top of the house and noticed the bell wasn't moving. So they followed the sounds of the ringing bell and climbed the stairs the 3rd floor. Opened up a closet where the sounds were coming from and found a fake wall. And behind the wall was the toddler swinging on a rope that was attached to a hidden bell. Kid was having a blast but couldn't get off. This house was part of the Underground Railroad in the north. This little toddler found one of a few hidden house secrets. They also had a fireplace that was a secret entrance to a tunnel that led down to a cove on the water for the slaves to escape onto boats. The tunnel has been long sealed, and sadly I never got to see it.